It's been 18 months since I started a simple experiment with InvestEngine. 2 accounts, identical monthly contributions, identical ETFs, and identical allocations, but one inside a SIPP and one inside a general invest account. I wanted to see in real numbers whether pension tax relief actually gives you a meaningful advantage over time. Not in theory, but in practice. And since the last update on my InvestEngine portfolio about a year ago, I've also made one big change. I reduced my bond allocation from 40% to 25% simultaneously in both accounts, and replaced them with Vanguard's high-yield dividend ETF, ticker VHYG, which has already started to impact how each portfolio behaves. So in today's video, I'm breaking down exactly how both accounts have performed after 18 months, and whether the SIPP is pulling ahead the way I expected, and also taking a look at how the new Vanguard high-yield dividend ETF allocation has changed things. If you decide on whether to invest in a SIPP, ISA or invest account, still to decide on what global ETF to choose as your core allocation, considering whether you should include bond funds in your portfolio, or wondering whether high-yield dividend ETFs are worth adding in addition to or in place of bonds, then this update should give you some real insight. So let's get into the numbers, with each account consisting of 4 ETFs, and the largest core ETF is the State Street Spider MSCI All Country World's UCITS ETF, accumulation with the ticker of ACWI. This is my core global ETF that occupies roughly 60% of each account, and originally formed part of a 60-40 equity bond allocation. This one is a truly global equity ETF, providing access across developed and emerging markets. It tracks the MSCI All Country World Index, which performs similarly to the other main truly global index, which is the FTSE All World Index. Given its low cost OCF of 0.12%, it helps me to reduce investing costs eating into my longer term returns. Why pay more when you can get global exposure for less? It has a heavy US tilt, as do all market-weighted global equity funds, whichever global index is tracked, and provides about 10% exposure to emerging market countries, including China, India, Brazil, and others in Asia. Including emerging markets provides more growth potential, but with some added price volatility. But you need to accept higher price volatility from investing in 100% equity funds in any case. Equities provide the potential for bigger growth, and volatility is the price you pay as an investor for potentially high returns. I recently published a video about Vanguard reducing the OCF of its very popular FTSE All World ETF with the ticker of VWRP, and you will see on the screen a list that compares other truly global ETFs that are available for you to take a look at also. In its ETF, industrials and financials are the largest sectors globally, with tech in third place, but the top 10 holders are dominated by technology stocks, with Apple, Nvidia and Microsoft occupying the top 3, with over 10% concentrated on these 3 stocks alone. With market-weighted indices, the bigger the company you are, the bigger the weighting you have in the index. So market cap weighting can often lead to heavier concentration on fewer companies. But that being said, investing in a fund that consists of thousands of companies like this one is still a better option to manage concentration risk than to pick individual company shares and put all of your eggs in one or very few baskets. In a global ETF, if, for instance, a single company like Apple were to go bust, then it might cause a ripple in your portfolio, and the many other companies would hopefully take up the slack to help maintain some price stability for you. In my portfolio, I've chosen additional options to achieve greater price stability by adding 2 very different bond funds that now occupy a reduced 25% in total. This splits 2 ways at 12.5% for each, with the first one being the Vanguard Global Aggregate Bond ETF with the ticker of VAGS accumulation, which invests in a diversified portfolio of over 13,000 global bonds, including government and corporate bonds, and comes with a low OCF of 0.08%. This one has about 26% exposure to the US, with about 39% of all bonds being sovereign or government issues. And the second one is the iShares UK Gilts 0 to 5 year UCITS ETF with the ticker of IGL5, which focuses on UK government bonds known as gilts, with much shorter maturities of up to 5 years. This comes with a very low OCF of 0.07% and has 20 gilt holdings. Bonds can be a great combination with equities to create more stability. You will get lower returns by adding bonds, but they then also come with much less volatility than equities. Investors often seek to match their objectives, balancing their attitude to risk with what they're trying to achieve financially. And adding bond funds to a portfolio can help with this, bringing an added layer of diversity to those diverse global equity ETFs, as the value of bonds as a different asset class tends to act differently to equities under the same market conditions. For example, where equities are in demand, the demand for bond funds might be more subdued, and the opposite will happen when investors move away from equities during times of market turmoil, putting bonds in higher demand as a safe haven to park cash and raising their value, with the price of each asset tending to move in opposite directions or not to be correlated. In principle, a mix of equities and bond funds should therefore make your investing journey smoother. There are occasions, however, when this principle does not work. For instance, in 2022, high interest rates and high inflation caused both asset classes to drop in value, which is why I used 2 different bond funds, to future-proof against a similar scenario occurring by balancing the better returns that I might get from a global fund that has longer duration government and corporate bonds from developed and emerging markets, with a UK government bond ETF, which is exclusively UK, excludes corporate bonds, and has a much shorter aggregate duration. Between these two, I can reduce duration risk, where longer duration bonds are more vulnerable to interest rate changes and inflation over longer periods of time. In 2022, as interest rates rose rapidly, older bonds that have been issued with lower interest rates or coupons became less desirable to investors and less valuable, as those newer ones were issued with higher coupons or interest rates and became more desirable. So why do I include bond funds in my portfolio? To get stability during equity drawdowns, eventual income generation, accumulation ETFs used for now with the income being reinvested, but with the option of drawing on the steady income stream they can provide in the future. There are diversification benefits, those correlation differences, and they also provide more psychological comfort through smoother portfolio behaviour. And the less volatile my portfolio is, the less I'm likely to panic and sell out. Having the flexibility of drawing on different assets in retirement in different conditions to prevent having to sell underperforming investments at a loss. For example, if equities are underperforming, bond fund prices are likely to be rising, and in those circumstances, bonds are probably the best asset to sell to obtain your income. And the final ETF, which takes up the remaining 50% once occupied by the bond funds, is Vanguard FTSE All-World High Dividend Yield UCITS ETF with the ticker VHYG. This ETF, with over 2,300 holdings, seeks to track the performance of an index of global companies known for paying above average dividends. It has a slightly higher OCF of 0.29%, which is synonymous with specialist dividend-paying funds. But even though this one has a higher OCF than the others, be minded that I'm only paying 0.29% on 50% of my portfolio, with the actual total OCF charge across all 4 ETFs being a low 0.13%. Being 100% equities, the high dividend ETF comes with a higher risk of 50% of bond funds that it replaces, but with potential for higher returns. I think that including this one is a better choice for me and my personal circumstances right now. I have a defined benefit pension that provides a guaranteed income for life, so I can afford to increase portfolio price volatility, taking on a little more risk to increase my returns, in the safe knowledge that I won't have to draw on investments during market lows. And even if Vanguard FTSE All-World High Dividend Yield ETF is 100% equities, seemingly increasing my overall exposure to that asset class, the companies contained in it are all very different. So it does add diversity in that sense. Many companies in this fund are stable, mature holdings, such as financials and utilities, that choose to pay dividends from their profits rather than to reinvest for growth. And the higher dividend yield in this ETF will hopefully boost overall returns, taking the edge off losses should markets decline, with investors also more reluctant to give up the income that the fund provides, and less inclined then to sell when markets fall. So the big question to answer is how my SIPP and investor account now compare since opening both at the same time 18 months ago, and where I've maintained identical funds in each and have paid in an identical £100 each every month. Where my investor account now has a value of £2,260, but outperforming this is my SIPP with a total value of £2,708. That is roughly £450 or nearly 20% more in my SIPP, and this difference is down to tax relief. Because if paying money into a SIPP, the government automatically adds an additional 20% of a basic rate taxpayer, and up to 45% in total if you pay higher rates of tax. This means that for every £100 I pay in, £25 is added, and those £25 add up over time. But these extra £25 sums also help to accelerate the overall compounding effect within the SIPP. Can you imagine what the difference would be invested for 20 or 30 years? The long-term impact. Regular investing, plus tax relief, plus reinvestment equals exponential growth. And in addition to the benefits of paying into a SIPP, if you have a workplace pension, you will also get the employer contributions on top of tax relief to accelerate compounding even more. That is free money from your employer, and a workplace pension should be where you start as an investor if you have an opportunity to join your work scheme. On looking at the individual performance of the 4 ETFs, the best performed by far is my Global Equity ETF with gains of 34% or £229. My 2 bond funds have made more modest gains, but that's okay as they're there for price stability reasons and not to provide any big returns as explained earlier. Interestingly, the Vanguard Dividend ETF VHYG is already up 2.5% since 13th of July when I first started investing in it in both accounts. So with the performance so far, low OCF charges, and with there being no platform or custody charges with Invest Engine, I'm very happy with how this experiment is going, with the overall balance, low costs, and tax relief for my SIPP. One thing to note here is that at this early stage, 18 months in, even though comparing a SIPP with an Invest account, the result would still be the same if the investor account happened to be a stocks and shares ISA instead, as taxes are not yet an issue given the amounts achieved so far. But as my portfolio grows, Using an ISA will help protect my investments from various taxes that could come into play once personal tax allowances on interest earned, capital gains, or dividend payments are reached. I'd already maxed out my ISA allowance of £20,000 per year when opening these accounts with Invest Engine, so I had to opt for an Invest account, but I will eventually move this to an ISA as those taxes will become more relevant with time. And any one of them will cause a significant drag on portfolio performance if I allow them to. So for now, I'll monitor this and look to keep within my personal tax allowances. My next steps with these accounts are to continue with the monthly contributions, to review my allocation more periodically, maybe annually, to transfer my GIA investments into a stocks and shares ISA before any of my investments start to become liable for tax, to ignore media noise and not panic during market falls, and just keep invested. I'd be really interested to know what you think about my investing strategy and what your investing plan is. Please drop me a comment in the box below, and thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.